Hi, I'm Luke Servold. Welcome to another episode of Meet the Gaffer. We're actually here at Intrepid Studios in San Rafael. We were on another job, we had a little extra time, we're going to do an episode. But first, let me tell you about the stage. It's a 38 by 34 foot square box. They've got a 2-wall white cyc already hung with 2K space lights for the wall. And also, separately, in the same space, there's a green screen. There's a 28-foot green screen. That also has 2K space lights hung. You can cordon that off with a black curtain. But yeah, you know, they've got some grip stuff here. Bring your own lights. It's actually a nice space. We are going to compare 4 different ellipsoidal type units. We've got a tungsten ellipsoidal, ETC. We've got a ETC LED Daylight HD as well. And then we have a 400 Joe Lico, and that's the Joker 2. And then we have the new Aputure 300D Mark II with the new Spotlight accessory. We're just going to jump into it, take a color reading, and then take an intensity foot candle reading. And yeah, bulb life, I'm not going to get into it. This is like you're pulling these off the truck. This would be your experience. Okay, so first off, good old ETC, nice and hot, ETC tungsten ellipsoidal. We're all using, these will all have 36 degree. I'm using the newer barrels that you get for your LEDs, but I've got it on the old housing. This is just 575 watt tungsten. All the units 15 feet away from the white cyc here. And I'm going to use the same barrel for the first 3 lights, and then Aputure makes their own barrels. So that's also a 36 degree. We'll just see how that compares. This is a 9-foot diameter circle. And so we'll go with that. Okay, so here, color-wise. Okay, so color, just out of the box, I've got, it's almost 3100 Kelvin. And yes, Jamie, if we could put some color in front. So we're just going to put a quarter blue in front of this. Okay, quarter blue, that brings us to about 4000 Kelvin. And then let's double that up just for yuckles. All right, 5000 Kelvin. I just did that real briefly. This is the only all tungsten unit, and we're comparing Aputure and HMI and a color tunable light. But, you know, in this, we're balanced. I'm balanced. I have a 200 watt Aladdin on me, all balanced daylight. So I just wanted to show you, because this is part of the discussion. You have a tungsten unit. If you want to use it daylight, you've got to put some blue in it, and you will probably lose some output. So we're going to put the blue in again in just a second, but now we'll take a foot candle reading. So we'll turn on our meter, and okay, so we got 220 foot candles, 220 foot candles. Let's go ahead and put 1 layer of the blue in front of that. Okay, now we've got 120 foot candles. So we lost 100 foot candles, and then if we double it, now we're at 70 foot candles. So that's a consideration. You're losing output when you're coloring your light. So having a unit that doesn't lose output when you change between colors is something you might want to consider. We'll talk further about this in the conclusion. But let's just try one more thing with this tungsten unit, and that is let's put a gobo in it just so we can compare that to the other units. So we can go nice and sharp, right? It's a little sharper in the middle than it is on the outside, so that's something that you can tweak a little bit here. We're not going to play with that right now, but you can kind of see, you know, it's all of the same piece. Of course, it's, you know, usually you'd fuzz something out like that or whatever. Okay, you wouldn't call that color fringing, but it is sort of a tungsten characteristic. That's what we've got on the tungsten world here. let's move on. Okay, so we'll turn this guy off, pull this guy out. Yeah. Okay, and here we go, boom. Okay. Now we're moving on to the Daylight HD, so LED version of ETC ellipsoidal, and this is their sort of Series 2, so it's got pretty good output, and it has color tunability. So we can go warm to cool, and we can also add in magenta or green. It's also an RGB fixture, so if you pull the barrel, you'll actually see all the color that's in it, which is pretty wild because I mainly use it as a daylight fixture, but it's got all those colors available to you. Same barrel that we had in the tungsten unit. It's given us our same sort of 9-foot diameter circle. Let's go take color reading and intensity. Okay, so we have 5800. Now I have 5600 labeled in the unit. 5800. So the beauty of tunability is that you can just tune it and get your color. So if I come down a little bit, 5400, now I've got 56. So even if what it says on the unit isn't exactly what I have here, I can tune it because I have all that tunability. Okay, let's go for output. Okay, 170 foot candles. So 170 foot candles, and that's daylight. And so when we came closer to 5,000 Kelvin, we were getting like 67 on the tungsten. So if you wanted to have a daylight unit and you wanted to have output, your LED is going to have that output in daylight. Now, we could test this at tungsten, but that's not, 32. 32. Huh. Okay, we've got 97 foot candles. So we had 170, right? So daylight was 170, and here we're like at about half. So tungsten-wise, interesting. So we had 220 foot candles on the tungsten unit. If you wanted to go tungsten, you might not want to go with your LED. Anyway, this is Daylight HD. It's meant to be used for daylight. That's its strength. So we learned something though. Yes, you can warm it, but it's not necessarily going to compete with your tungsten very well. Interesting. One more thing we're going to do with this unit is put the gobo in. So when you put a pattern in and you fuzz it out, let's see what happens. So sharp. That's actually pretty good edge to edge. You're getting some color fringing. But to be honest, it wasn't that much different than the tungsten in some ways. So, but often you'll have the case where you pull this out, you show your DP what you've got, and they go, that color fringing, I don't like that. Can we do without that? And you're like, well, no, that sort of comes with the unit. But if you get behind camera and that gobo is a little out of focus, you're not really concentrating on the fringing. You don't actually see it too well. So often, to eye, you're thinking like, oh, that can't work. But to camera, because usually what you're doing with this unit is doing a little something in the background, it's often out of focus and works well. And the fact that you can warm it up, can cool it up, is a good thing. Okay, let's move on. Yeah. So here we have this Joker 2 400 bug light, and it's into a regular ETC ellipsoidal housing. Same 36-degree lens and all. It's got a fair amount of output, but the color, 6300. So here we're a little bluer, and so we'd have to put gel on it. We can't just tune in the color that we want. Just something to consider. Let's check output. All right, we've got 360 foot candles, so plenty to play with if we need to soften it, if we need to color it. There's a lot of light there, and that's the 400 Joker. Okay, now let's put the pattern in. Okay. Similar to tungsten in a way. This just has a daylight feel. And it still has a little bit of warmth in there. Yeah, so, but nice, crisp pattern. It's a little warmer on the inside than it is on the outside. So since that was true of the tungsten as well, I'm thinking it's the lensing. I've probably got some really dirty lenses in there. All right. So let's move on to our last unit. And this is the Aputure 300D Mark II with the new Spotlight adapter accessory. It has a separate barrel. You can get different barrels. This is the 36-degree. As you can see, it's a little bit narrower than the ETC barrels. It's also a lot smaller. So you just take it out the same way. You have to completely take out the knurled knob for it to slide all the way out. Then it comes out, and it's it's smaller than the other barrels. Maybe I'll just get a quick comparison here. So you put them side to side, and you've got the ETC barrel and the Aputure barrel. So that if you get a bunch of them, just like you have to get with these, you'd have a smaller, you'd get more in a box. Okay, so we'll put this back in. Now they do make their own barrels, but the gobo that I had in the other units fits just fine in the gobo holder that you get with the Spotlight. And I don't know if it's in all cases, but they gave 3 sort of generic, a window pattern and 2 organic breakups, which is awesome. Now, the build on this sucker is solid. So if you're thinking you're getting a prosumer piece of equipment, no, this is good, solid pro gear, which is cool. Let's check the color. I'm getting 5200. So that's a little under 5600. It's within range, but similar to an HMI, that's what you get. It's fixed. So with an HMI, you want a different color temperature, you need to put gel in front of it. Same with the Aputure 300D. And that's neither here nor there, but that's something to consider if you're used to tuning your lights warm, cool, easily. You're not going to get that here. Different from an HMI, you can dim a little bit, but often when you're dimming it, you're cooling it in terms of a Kelvin temperature. And so here you can dim and you're not changing your color temp, you're just getting less output. So that's a bonus. With this unit, it's all in one, unlike the first go round, and you've got regular 5-pin DMX, and it's also wireless. You can learn all about the specs and how they sort of measure up on Gaffer and Gear and other YouTube channels. I'm not going to go over that today. This is more about talking about the Spotlight and how it compares to the other units. Let's check output. Okay, we've got 140 foot candles coming out of this guy in daylight, and so obviously that's quite a bit less than the 400 Jolico, and it's again another 40 foot candles less than the Daylight HD, but it's at a much lower price point. So again, there's all these sort of different variables that you have to take into consideration when you're choosing a light for your project. So output-wise, 140 foot candles. Now let's just put in the gobo. That's pretty crisp. Huh. And you don't really have the warm stuff that we had with the other ones. It's just all sort of the same color. You have a little bit of that, where some parts stay. Huh, that's pretty cool. All right. Now, for a unit that has a large LED sensor, a larger LED sensor for the 300 watt, the fact that we can get such a crisp shadow is pretty cool. I mean, that speaks to the quality of lensing that they've put in their unit. And I like that. And usually when you're using these ellipsoidals, you're not using them at full strength anyway. So the sort of top end of the intensity is not really as big a factor when you're using these kind of units in sort of interview situations. Now, if you want a hard slash of light, then yeah, 400 Jolico is exactly what you want, or an 800 Jolico, or even more than that. But when you're creating a little background thing on an interview set, or even sort of little scenarios or whatever, you're usually not using these guys at full scenario. So the fact that you can dim it down easily, don't have to put wire in it, this is a really good use for this type of unit. So just sort of overall, my gut reaction to comparing these units, they all sort of have a different way, a different usage. You've got tungsten, you've got maximum output in tungsten. And now it's just a 575, not even a 750. So if you're working with tungsten, hey, that's the way to go. You've got heat, you've got different issues, and if you want to go cool, you're going to lose a lot of output. Now with the Daylight HD, if I've got an event going, I want to have access to the changeability, to the tunability of it. And so that's the right unit for an event, or for if I'm going to be using other units and green magenta is going to come into play. That's a great unit to have, because I can do it locally, I can do it wirelessly. It ties into that kind of a system. If I need output, the HMI. If I'm working with daylight and I need good output, I need good definition on the pattern, this is a solid unit. So, again, nobody wins. Everybody has a role to play, and I think that's the beauty of it, but it's also cool to see them in comparison to each other. It was fun doing this at Intrepid Studios, and had the help of Chris Gonzalez on camera, and then Jamie Campana, and also Sam Slade. So, hey, thanks for watching. We'll see you again next time.